Morning. Hey, today I just wanted to read a quote and then talk a little bit before we get to some Bible. This is a quote from 1877, a book by Philip Brooks called Guides to Sermons in Ministry. It was delivered at the Divinity School of Yale College as a series of lectures between January and February 1877. Just a quote I pulled out of it. I called the other tendency. He's talking about two tendencies that lead preachers astray. And he said, I call the other tendency the tendency of mechanism. It is the disposition of the preacher to forget that the gospel of Christ is primarily addressed to individuals, and that its ultimate purpose is the salvation of multitudes of men. Between the time when it first speaks to a man's soul and the time when that man's soul is gathered into heaven, the whole host of the redeemed, the gospel, with the whole host of the redeemed, the gospel uses a great many machineries which are more or less impersonal. But if the preacher ever for a moment counts them, these machineries, the purpose of his working, if he takes his eyes off the single soul as a prize he is to win, he falls from the highest function and loses his best power. Now, that might be a whole lot of words. You have no idea what he just said. I'll comment on it and read. He's talking about all the things that go on people get saved. We've got a church here, many other churches across the country. And we get busy. We have a school. We have a young people's athletic program. We have our Baptist Boys Battalion. We have a Blue Denim and Lace, little boys and girls organizations like scouting groups. We have youth activities, and we have adult activities. We just came back from a couples retreat in San Diego. We may have a senior citizens dinner, all kinds of, there's lots of things going on. These are the machineries that help, you might use the word, to encourage spiritual growth in the believer. And he said there's a great many machineries, but don't forget the main goal. And so let me go down with that again. He says, between the time when the gospel first speaks to a man's soul and the time when that man's soul is gathered into heaven with the whole host of the redeemed, the gospel uses a great many machineries which are more or less impersonal. But if that preacher ever for a moment counts them, those machineries, the purpose of his working, if he takes his eyes off the single soul as a prize he is to win, he falls from his highest function and loses his best power. And so there we are in 1877, a man teaching at the Yale Divinity School of Divinity, and he's warning these preachers, you're going to have all kinds of activities, you're going to have all kinds of programs, and you're going to have Sunday schools and all kinds of teach the Bible types of things. And those are all the machineries that God uses to bring a man's soul from his first introduction of the gospel to when he's gathered into heaven. But he said when the preacher forgets the main thing is the individual soul being saved, when the preacher forgets that his big job is to win a soul to Christ, then the whole thing falls apart. And there's nothing new. It's like I've crossed paths with people. They will spend countless hours during the week working on the music, the concert that they put on Sunday morning. They'll have the lead guitar and the drummer, and they'll have the dance team, the praise team. They'll have all these people out there. They'll have the guy running the lights that are going on and off and changing lights in the spotlight and the PA and all this stuff. Dozens sometimes of people involved in many, many hours to get the music just right. So Sunday morning, in fact, I heard a guy who was in charge of the music at one of these kind of praise churches. He said, I don't like special music. He said, the average church member that likes to sing, they can't sing. They're not helping the church service. He said, I'd like them to just stay in the pew, enjoy the music, and leave it to the people who do it well. And I think, man, whatever the arrogance. I love our choir. Some of the people in the choir, you'd never want them to sing a solo or a duet or a quartet, but they're fine in that choir. I love our teen choir. I love the little kids groups that come in to sing. And then, of course, we've got some great people with great voices who sing, and I'm thankful for every one of them. But off of that, you can get so busy making music the main thing. It's just part of the machinery. One time in the New Testament, you you read where Jesus sang a hymn with the disciples. I think in the book of Hebrews it says that among the brethren I'll sing your praise, and I'm blanking on that verse. But one time the Bible talks about Jesus singing. After the Lord's Supper, when they left, they sang a hymn, and then elsewhere in the Bible it talks about he sang with the believers one time. But to some people, boy, music is everything. They don't carry a gospel tract. They won't witness to people. They never couldn't think of the last time they led a soul to Christ. And they're not bad people. They're just they've fallen from the main thing. Now, here's the point. The devil doesn't use anything new. He uses the same old stuff. He uses the same things to keep us from doing the main thing. The main thing is getting people getting them saved and getting their name in the book of life and getting them into heaven. That's the main thing. The training and the discipling and the teaching and the encouragement of spiritual growth, that's all fine. But we can't stop winning souls. We can't stop looking for people. The devil used the same stuff. What has he used? You follow through your Bible, you'll find he uses liquor. That's what messed up Noah. He used a wife who was pushing her husband a direction that he would not have gone on his own. Got Adam to eat the forbidden fruit. Got Abraham to take Hagar as his wife. Those were pretty. Those decisions had huge consequences, and so. And then there's of course, Solomon, his lust and his lustfulness for women and gold and horses and fame and all that ruined him. Well, those are things that ruin us still. The love of money, the lust for the lust for passionate, sensuous things. Liquor, it's always been a problem. Who hath woe, who hath sorrow, who hath redness of eyes, and Proverbs speaks much of it, but elsewhere in the Bible talks about it. The devil, he used the same thing. He'll use, if you go back 20 years, 50 years, you'll find great Christians and spiritual leaders warning Christian men and ladies, don't get so busy you forget your spouse. You go back 100, 200 years, you'll see people getting so busy with war, their soldiers, or with farming, that they forget they've got children to raise. It's the same thing, getting so busy here that we forget a responsibility there. And it's been the age-old problem is how do I get it all done? And some people are better at it than others, but none of us have mastered it. I can guess. I don't know anybody who's mastered getting it all done. But the point is the devil doesn't use new stuff because the old stuff works so well. And he'll get you or me so busy. He gets preachers so busy we stop reading our Bible. He'll get preachers so busy they don't spend time in prayer. We can't afford to be that way. Now, biblically, there is so much to be done, but the big things are the things we ought to focus on. And so let's just again, 1877, warnings to the ministerial students. Don't get so busy with the program of the church that you forget souls, because that is the big thing. And so and again, the thought being all the things Satan uses to get you off track. But let's remember, it has always been, it always will be the value of a soul. He that turneth many to righteousness shall shine as the stars forever and ever, Daniel says. And the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he that winneth souls is wise, Proverbs tells us. This thing of talking to one person at a time. You can't talk to the wrong person. Whatever their response is doesn't matter. What matters, you told them. And so let's on purpose remember he's got the same old tools to ruin us. Misspending, foolish spending, and then there's not money to care for the needs. But I want to, off of that, I just want to take a minute or two and talk to you about things that you know. And let me just remind you. Paul said to the church, I think it was a church in Thessalonica, I want to stir up. Maybe it was Titus or Timothy. I want to stir up to your remembrance. Thinking about prayer, and I may preach on this in the days ahead, but I'm not sure if it'll come up. So while I'm thinking on it, think about prayer. When's the first time you could think of prayer mentioned in the Bible? You have to think a little bit. And I got thinking about it. I thought, you know what? I think the Garden of Eden. Every day, God walked with Adam. Every day. Every day, there's a man and his God. And what did Adam pray for? He had everything he needed. He was in a perfect world. He didn't have to pray about health or wealth. He didn't have to pray about sick children. He didn't have to pray about a corrupt government. He didn't have to pray about, getting a house or property for a church he's starting. And you know what? Every day, Adam and God just hung out together. Can I tell you the first thing about prayer? You and God just hanging out together. Just you and God. Just take some time. Go sit on the front porch or the back porch, or go sit somewhere where it's quiet. If you want to, like Jesus said, go to your closet and pray. And just take some time like you'd sit with a dear friend, and just sit there and just talk about whatever comes up. Go back and reflect on the goodness of God. I go back regularly. I go back to a guy named Ross Llewellyn. I have no idea where he is or was. I haven't seen him since the end of my first year in college, which would have been May of 1976. But Ross was a graduate student, and he's the first one who took me out soul winning. He said, "Has anybody taught you how to win a soul?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Come with me after class tomorrow or whatever day." He said, he made an appointment. He said, "You meet with me." And we had that little Campus Crusade track, God's Four Spiritual Laws. And I think of a lady, Becky Manley. Becky Manley was a beautiful young lady, 25 or so, who oversaw something called InterVarsity was the organization, like Campus Crusade. It was on university campuses, and InterVarsity was this organization that brought basically Saturday night church to the campuses and taught people and helped them. What we would use the term, people would use the term, they discipling Christians. She led this group, Christian group, I don't know, 20, 30 people on a Saturday night would meet together and they'd sing. And she didn't really lead it. She was so careful. She'd call up one of the upperclassmen and he would lead some songs, and she'd have somebody else share this or that. And she, through the different people, they taught how to have a evangelistic Bible study, how to, in your dorm room, gather other college students and lead them to Christ. And boy, I learned so much in that group, especially about the spirit of the child of God, about prayer and Bible reading. And here this lady, I'm 18, she's just a few years older than me, but wow, did I learn. And I can go along. There was a pastor who'd drive 2 hours over a mountain road to meet on an off night, like a Tuesday night or a Thursday night. And he would come from Reading, and I'm blanking on his name now. Dean was his first name, but he was a pastor, and he'd come up and just teach the Bible. Wow, did I learn. And that was the semester I was home between leaving secular college and going to Bible college. And of course, our assistant pastor in our church was my favorite Bible teacher, Nick Bruno, an Italian guy. Wow, he was a great teacher. And I still use things he taught us, and I remember things he taught us. And I can go through my Christian life to people. Craig Scott, the youth pastor in our church in Reading, had such an impact on my wife and I. We have for these 40 plus years a most amazing camp ministry. And many churches have taken ideas. They've come to our camp, seen what we did, and then they run their own camps and picked up ideas from all different parts, but especially about Bible memory and preaching and the song service and all. I learned all that from Craig Scott. And what an impact Craig Scott. And so many times I go through my Christian heritage and I just thank God for people. Now, the first time you see God and man meeting together was in the garden, and there was no sickness to pray about. There was no lost souls to pray about. There was just fellowship between a God and a man. And I'd like to just remind you that perhaps the most important thing you could do in your prayer life is to just hang out with God. Don't we like to hang out with friends? Especially men. I don't know how ladies are, but I think they're the same. But you can see in my neighborhood, these homes around, I can't believe the houses around where I lived, 3,000 and 4,000 square foot homes and 5-bedroom homes and big old 3-car garage and just beautiful homes and air conditioning and all those kind of things. And there'll be a giant TV in the garage and a couple of couches and there'll be some of the neighborhood guys just hanging out in the garage. And just, they're not doing anything. watching a ball game or whatever. They're just hanging out together. Men like that, and I'm sure ladies are the same. You know what? God would love to hang out with you. So, thinking of prayer, I'd like to challenge you, and some of you have a lot of time, and this is not a big deal, but others of you, you're going to have to work at this. I want to challenge you, take time each day to just hang out with God. Get somewhere away from the phone and away from distractions and away from text messages. Go sit on a street corner somewhere. Go down to a park where no one's going to bother you and just sit there and just tell God how good he is. Tell God how thankful you are for the things he's done. I look back so often to my family, and I am so grateful for my upbringing, my parents, my stepdad when my dad left, and then some years later my mom remarried, and my dad and my stepdad. I am thankful for things in my life that I got from men. I was raised with men in the home, good men. Men that were men. My natural father never went to church with us like my stepdad did, and never saw him with a Bible like I saw my stepdad. But to me, he was an example of a man, a masculine man that went to work every day and came home every night. And, just stop somewhere and thank God. Just take a few minutes in your day. We start talking about prayer, and I believe prayer is asking. And I believe there's prayer promises. The Lord said, ask and it shall be given. Seek and ye shall find. He said, open thy mouth wide and I'll fill it. And Jeremiah, call unto me and I'll answer thee and show thee great and mighty things. I believe all those promises. If we ask anything according to his will, we know that we have the petition we desire of him. I believe all that stuff. But the first time you find man and God hanging out, it's in a perfect world where there were no prayer requests. There were no prayer lists. There was no prayer, on the TV evangelist prayer chain that you can call and get all these people praying for you. It's just a man and his God. And I think, obviously there's some ladies watching, a lady and her God. Let's take time to just hang out with God. Take time to look at the sky and look at the trees. Take time to think about what God's done for you. And again, I can walk through my life. I'm so thankful. I was raised with a very strong mother, and she worked and she kept our home in order and almost always worked a full-time job. But she stood by her husband, and I watched her love her parents and her sister and her sister's family, and they're just the two. Didn't have a lot of cousins or anything, just the three in that family, and a couple in my dad's side of the family. We didn't have big families like that, but I could just sit and think through my family, and then jobs I had, and God's been so good, and I could think back to people he put in my life, school teachers and college teachers and other pastors. When I started the church here, there's a guy named John Stevens who pastored in Santa Maria for many years, very well-known pastor in California. And we'd just been here a few months, not long at all, and I don't know how he even knew who I was. But he knew we were young, starting church, and we were broke. And he called me up out of the clear blue. I don't know if I'd ever shaken his hand. Maybe I shook his hand at a rescue mission banquet, but I didn't know him. And he called me up and he said, my wife and I live in Santa Maria, and we've got a nice home here, but we're going east on vacation for whatever, a couple of weeks, maybe a few weeks. He said, I just know when you're starting out, you don't have any money, and maybe you and your wife would like a vacation. He said, our area is a beautiful area. He said, I want to volunteer my house. Listen to this. Now, this is a stranger. Hardly even knew the man. I don't know if I ever shook his hand. Maybe I did, but that would have been the most. He said, I want to offer you my house. And he said, if you would just like to just come up to Santa Maria and spend a few days or a week or so or two in my house and go over to the coast or go to Solvang and just hang out. If you'd just like a few days on vacation that wouldn't cost you anything, I'd like you to know that my house is available. Now, we couldn't do it, or we didn't do it. Maybe we should have. But and we became friends. And he was an older pastor who was very good to me until he moved out of California, moved east. But I look back at John Stevens and thought, what a good man, who just influenced my life. Would you just take time to hang out with God and just be his friend. And just, talk about the Bible with him. It's all right. God, I was reading this, and I can hardly wait to get to heaven and find out how that thing really went. And God, I know that I've read this story over and over, but I really like to know about that 5,000 people. How did that work? You have all those people out on the hillside along the shores of the Sea of Galilee. Now, look, that's a lot of people. Where'd they sit? Where'd they stand? Where did you have porta potties brought in? I mean, there's a lot of complications with a crowd of 5,000 people. And just talk to God. Could I encourage you? Yes, pray. Have a prayer list and have a time each day when you pray and all that. And all that you typical stuff you hear about prayer. Yes, do those things. But would you just hang out with God and love on him and just take time with him? I'm busy. I'm too busy probably, but I enjoy going to visit my mom and just sitting at her house and just talking about nothing important. My brother's pretty far away, a 6-8 hour drive away, and so we don't get together much. We talk on the phone, and I like the time we get to talk. I would love him to be close enough where I could just drive over and spend an hour or two. With my kids, I love when my kids come to our house, and I just get to watch them, watch the grandkids play, and my kids talking, and my children and their spouse. Right now, three kids here, and so there's 6 of them. They're all married, and I just get to see them hang out. I love hanging around my family. I love hanging around my wife. I don't need to be doing anything. Maybe I'm at that age where you don't need to be active. Just breathing is enough activity. But I want to encourage you every day, God met with Adam. Why did God do that? Because he liked hanging out with his friend. Don't forget how much you mean to God.